Hey guys, Ryther Nerd here, and I think I'm in love with fairy tales. I'm honestly just in love with fairy tales. I've been just enthralled in fairy tales and media. I've already did a review of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which was probably one of the greatest movies I've seen in a while. Go check out that video if you really want to. I've also been rewatching the Shrek movies because why not? And I've also rewatched the Puss in Boots, the first movie. I just been loving I've been just embracing fairy tales right now. And I feel like there's one piece of media that is a really great example of putting fairy tale characters in a world that people are not used to seeing them in. This piece of media does that concept extremely well. And that piece of media is a game called The Wolf Among Us. Now, you may have heard of this game. This game is made by the same people or the same company, Telltale. They've made, Tales from the Borderlands, the Walking Dead series, Batman. But I feel like The Wolf Among Us is probably one of the most underrated pieces of work. Besides, the Wallace and Gromit game. Does anybody remember that game? Because God knows that I do. But this game does that concept that I said before of taking beloved fairy tale characters and putting them in a world that people are not used to seeing them in. They've done it extremely well, and it's just an amazing, all-around, fantastic game. But before we get into, in-depth, because there will be spoilers for this video, by the way, I want everybody to stop what they're doing right now and please play the game. It's on Steam. It's also on the App Store. It's a fantastic game. I absolutely love this game. You need to play it before you watch this video because I don't want this video to spoil, because playing this game without knowing anything about it is just 10 times better for the experience, in my opinion. But I think that this game is absolutely amazing. But before we get into, the in-depth of why this game is just so amazing and awesome and just all around a great experience to play, we also have to go into the history. Like I said, this game is made by Telltale, and just like all other Telltale games, it is not an original piece of work. I don't think there's any actual Telltale game that's actually an original piece of work. I thought The Wolf Among Us was actually an original Telltale game, but apparently it's not. It's actually based on a really obscure graphic novel series called Fables, also known as The Wolf Among Us. And I have not done my research at all, so if somebody can please fill me in to if this game is actually based around the graphic novels. Is it a continuation of the graphic novels? Is it just like an entire, separate adventure from the graphic novels? Is it even canon? I have no idea, but what I can tell from doing my research, quote unquote, I can tell that they have put a lot of thought and effort into making this game feel like the graphic novels. The graphic novels has a very unique feel to them, and we'll get to that in a minute, but they have done it extremely well of taking the source material and putting them in a game that people can enjoy equally as much as the graphic novels. Even if you have not seen or read the graphic novels like I have, you can still enjoy this game, and it's just all around an amazing game. Now, we're going to jump into spoiler territory right here. So, just like I said, please click off the video if you have not played this game, or you can watch videos on it. I don't care, but you guys need to see and play this game for yourself because it's absolutely amazing. So, without further ado, let's get into why The Wolf Among Us is Telltale's Magnum Opus. So, do you remember when I said that the game is really faithful to the graphic novels, and it really makes you feel like you're in the graphic novels, and that is done brilliantly through the art style that they decide to make this game in. The art style is absolutely phenomenal. From the first opening scene, when you first open up the game, you are taken through this beautiful neon city landscape. It's absolutely amazing. There is a lot of neon colors in here. You got a club which has a lot of neon colors in it. But there's also some really warm colors when you're when you're in a building or an office building. Even when you're in a bar setting, all the colors and lights around you are very warm, so it makes you feel like you're very welcomed and cozy in there. And then there are some instances where you're in dark places like Big B's apartment where you can really feel the dread and shelter that he's feeling. And there's also a factory near the climax where it's very gray and very mysterious. And then you also have where the witching well is, where it's very dark and very dungeon like, and it makes you feel very ominous, and you're like, oh, what the hell is going to go on in here? So the art style is very, very done brilliantly, and it makes you feel like you're actually in the graphic novels. Even the character designs are really faithful to the graphic novels. Personalities are also really faithful to the graphic novels. Every single bit of detail in this entire world is done beautifully with the art style. You got like all the facial hairs is really done with a really fine tip. And you even got like really crazy proportions with the different monster designs as well. And they all have like their unique spin on what their form is based on. You got like a troll, which is very big, but it's also not too big. Then you also have one of my favorite characters in the game, the Jersey Devil, where when he transforms into his Jersey Devil form, it's all very reminiscent of a Wendigo, and all the detail where like his skin and his skull is revealed and everything is just really well done. And every single time when it's nighttime, you feel a very warm and comforting situation. But when there's a situation where there's a character that's very ominous, if you play the game, you know what I mean. But when you're cornered in this dark alley, and then it's all night, but you're usually used to playing the game at night. But when this character shows up, the entire night setting, instead of being calm and collective, it's all kind of chaos, and all the colors are turning bright red, and all the different colors are mixing together, so it gives you this very chaotic feeling. So it's done beautifully to create mood, but also being extremely faithful to the graphic novels, which I also really do appreciate. And also what's really appreciated about this entire game, like I said, with the characters are also extremely interesting as well. Even if you haven't played or even if you haven't reread the graphic novels, you can still really get really invested with the characters, because there's so much personality being shown through their dialogue and their facial expressions. And the way they interact with you, the player, is also very nice. But there's also a little bit more going on with the characters than some other games that Telltale has made. You're gonna be hearing me talk about The Walking Dead, but I don't want to make you feel like I hate the Walking Dead games. I absolutely love the Walking Dead games. But there is a major issue with that game, and that is to the characters, because some of the characters, except for like the main characters like Clementine and everything like that, all the other characters, they just kind of feel like zombie bait, and you don't really get attached to them. You only get like extremely attached if it's like a main character, but all the other side characters, when they die brutally, you're like, oh my god, they're getting brutally murdered by zombies. But with these characters in this game, they all have a really interesting past, because they are, like I said, fairy tale characters, and they've all done a really unique spin on their characters. For example, the Woodsman. We all know the Woodsman. He's the one who saved Little Red Riding Hood from the Big Bad Wolf. But in this one, in this game, he was actually going to rob Little Red Riding Hood, and the only reason why he actually saved Little Red Riding Hood was because he thought that he would give her some kind of reward, but in reality she didn't give him anything. So then he kind of turns to alcohol, and he's just kind of basically being forgotten. Then you also have Big B, which is like he is the Big Bad Wolf in every story. You got Red Riding Hood, the Three Little Pigs, everything like that. But there's also a really in-depth story where there's like lore about where they came from and everything like that. There was like a war that was going on as well, and there's also like backstory between him and Snow White, how he actually saved her from from being imprisoned and everything like that. So that's why Snow White is very connected with Big B, and also same goes for him as well. Jesus, I can't speak at all. But yeah, they all have these really great characters as well, but they also have really great backstories as well. And they also play in to your choices as well. So keep that in mind. Also, make sure every single time when you meet a new character, by the way, you always get like a new bio about the character. I would highly recommend reading them if you are going to play this game, which I highly recommend you do. Please read the bios because they are also really interesting pieces of lore, but they're also really they can also help you deciding choices as well. I don't want to get into depth into it, but they can also help you with your choices that you make. So just keep that in mind. And speaking of choices, so since this is a Telltale game, you're gonna have some choices, and sometimes, I'm bringing The Walking Dead up again, but sometimes when you choose choices in The Walking Dead, they're usually more character driven instead of actually story based. Which is it's a little bit underwhelming because you really want to get in depth with the characters and you also want them not to die, but you also want the story to be really interesting. And sometimes it could be a little bit overwhelming and a bit underwhelming as well because sometimes it doesn't really work out all that well. But in this game, your choices matter to the characters around you, but they also matter extremely, extremely to the story. You can either just kill one of your leads, like the one of the leads that you actually have, in solving the murder of Fables in New York. So it's like very very you can be extremely brutal, but you can also be extremely forgiving. And then if you're extremely brutal, then people are going to be more afraid of you and they're not going to give you the information that you want. If you be really kind, then people are going to start warming up to you. And then you can also be in depth with Snow White and everything like that. But like I said before, your choices matter extremely well because you can either, near the end of the climax, you're finally up against the person that actually murdered all of these fables and been basically terrorizing this small little community. You find him, you can either bring him in for justice, or you can either just kill him right then and there, and then you just basically don't have to deal with any of the people's arguing and everything like that. But if you do kill him, then if you come back to the trial and everything, people are going to be like, well, good on you, Big B, you killed the son of a gun that murdered all these innocent women. And then there are some people that are going to be like, why would you do that? We wanted a fair trial. But if you bring him in, then people are going to be like, oh, throw him down the witching well. He's useless. He murdered all these women. But then you can also be like, no, we can imprison him, and then we can do this the fair way and not being absolutely murdered. So you have all these different choices that matter to the story and the characters around you. So that's really great that they decided to actually do that. And this game basically came out like before like The Walking Dead started to become a lot more popular. It came out around the same time as chapter 2 did of The Walking Dead, and I feel like they've done a lot more depth with this game than the actual Walking Dead. That's just my opinion, but like I said, the choices are matter extremely, extremely well, and every choice is connected to the story and the characters as well, so also keep that in mind when you're playing, because usually sometimes when you read the story is adapted about how you play and everything like that, and sometimes you can be like, oh, okay, whatever. But in this game, you can be like, oh, I need to pick wisely with these situations instead of just being completely throwing them in the back of your mind and just pick whatever you want pretty much. So when you're playing this game, make sure you make sure that the choices you pick are the right choices. So that's why I'm just going to say that like that, but it's done brilliantly through the choices that you make. So that's why I just wanted to get the point across, but you get the point by now. And speaking of story, so I have mentioned some details about the story, so you'll be like, wait, what, murder? Women being murdered? What the hell are you talking about? So I'm going to get into a little bit of spoilers, but it's just basically a plot synopsis. Pretty much the fables that you all know and love have been exiled from their homelands, and they are living in a really crappy side of New York City, where there's basically crime everywhere, and it's just a really not a good place to be, pretty much. And they're pretty much basically poor. They're trying to, stay alive, try to survive out in the world that they're not used to. Coming back to the concept that I mentioned earlier of Fable characters being put in a situation that people are not normally being, seeing them in. But it's also kind of the same for the Fables as well, because they're in a situation that they are not normally seen in as well. So it's very confusing for them as well. But they're also trying to do their damn hardest to make the community safe as possible. And Big B Wolf is the sheriff of this small little community of Fables. So he's not he's not working with like the normal people police, also known as the mundane people as well. So you're gonna hear me say Mundy and whatever. So it just means normal. It's just how the game works. But basically, he's not working with the mundane police and everything. He's only sheriff in this small little community. So when he's being interrogated in some scenes, you're like, oh God, hopefully this doesn't get leaked, because since it is a small little community of fables and magic and everything, they want to keep all this stuff under wraps. So there, when you find this body, they're like, oh God, we got to keep this under wraps and make sure that we solve this case quickly so our community doesn't fall into panic, and also the mundane people don't find this body as well and find out about this as well. So everybody just shut your traps and just work on this quietly. So that's pretty much what this entire plot is, of keeping this entire murder, solving the murder, but also keeping it under wraps from people learning about it and everything like that. So that's basically the main plot of the story here. And I think that's done beautifully well, because we've all seen like murder mysteries and everything like that. And it's always a little bit cliche and everything like that. But what's really interesting about this game is that it's not a big, it's not in a big area. It's in a small area. You're only going into a couple of buildings and areas and stuff like that in the small little neighborhood. But it's also a small cast of characters, so it could literally be, the murderer could literally be anybody. It could be, the person that's just walking down the street that or it could be the person that's actually trying to help you solve the murder. So you're always on edge all the time. You're always like thinking to yourself like, oh God, who's the murderer? Are they saying stuff like really sussly? What's going on here? So I recommend, by the way, playing this game. I would recommend playing this game with a notebook, because this game is a highly attention based. You always have to be on guard all the time. Keep an eye on people's movements, the dialogue that they say, details around you. So I would recommend writing stuff down that you think are interesting, dialogue, detail wise, item wise, anything like that. It will just help you keep first off, like, keep all the information that you have on hand, so you can be like, oh, wait a minute, he said something about this, but that doesn't go with what I wrote down over here. So it could be it could also be very helpful, but it's also going to keep you guessing a lot. So you could be like, wait a minute, the ending, the murder had nothing to do with this matchbook that I found at the beginning of the game. I thought this was like the most interesting thing ever. So it always keeps you guessing, and 99.9% of the time you're not going to get everything right, but it's just a little bit, it's a little bit of a guessing game, and it makes you more involved in the game that you're playing. So that's what I recommend. But there is also a really great ending to this game, twist ending. And usually when I say twist endings, people are going to be like, oh God, here's another cliche twist ending that you can guess from a mile away. But the twist ending is also extremely like out of left field. It could be a little bit like out of place for some people, but personally for me, I feel like it's done extremely well. You just have to be paying attention, and then you'll get it pretty much instantly. They do a little bit of explaining of the ending at the end with like flashbacks and stuff like that. But I recommend keeping a notebook, and so then when the twist ending comes, you can be like, oh my God, it all makes sense now. But the twist ending is also extremely good. It's also a bit of a cliffhanger as well. For people who know anything about the game, or who's in the fandom of this game, you would know that there's a sequel coming out, which I'm really excited for, and I hope that many people can find this game and get involved in this game, so you guys can be hyped for the sequel, because I want the sequel to do extremely well, and I'm really hyped for it. But yeah, that's pretty much what all I have to say about this game. It's a beautifully amazing game. It's a great murder mystery. It has a great story, great characters, fantastic art style. The twist ending is just awesome. I love the twist ending. And so I hope that when you find this video, if you guys are new here and you found this video, I highly recommend playing this game because, man, I want more people to know about this game because, goddamn, it's one of Telltale's most underrated pieces of work, and I just absolutely love it. So that's going to do it for me, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe. I don't care what you do because I know what time it is. So, bye, guys.